Okay, we'll begin. So I'll give you just a bit of an introduction to the workshop and the importance really of registering your patrons. So as public library staff, you're connecting your patrons in your communities to your many collections and different programs and all of your services. And for the people who have print disabilities in your area, you can offer them both your local accessible collections, but also you can talk to them about CELA and hopefully register them if they're interested in receiving books from us as well. So today I will walk through the CELA registration form to show you how you can go through it so that your patrons with print disabilities, and that means a learning disability, visual, or a physical disability where they cannot hold a book or turn the pages of a book, can sign up and use our services. Okay, so we're going to begin the walkthrough. Please let me know if I'm going too fast. I certainly can slow down, but I do want to go through a whole form. So I'll just keep the pace going along. But again, if I'm going too quickly, please let me know. All right, so what I'm going to do for our demo, I'm actually going to turn my camera off so the full concentration is on the screen and you'll be able to see what I'm showing you. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is, first of all, to go to the registration form for libraries, you sign into, you go to celalibrary.ca, and then you need to log in with your library account. So I'm going to log in as a library, and every library has a 6-digit CELA account number. And any CELA account number, whether it's for a patron or for a teacher, it's always a 6-digit login. So I'll just put in our password here and press the login button. And now we're logged in. So how do we tell if we're logged in? Well, at the top, it's going to say welcome, and it will have your 6-digit number here. When you log in as a library, there are 2 links that you'll find. No one else has these links except for libraries. And under a heading called Library Services, there's a link that says Library Patron Registration, which is what we're going to talk about today, obviously. And also there's the Statistics link. So statistics means that you can see the activity of your patrons who use CELA, and it also will show the activity that you as the library are doing with CELA. So essentially your downloads or checkouts from CELA, likewise by patrons. You also can see the number of people who are registered with CELA in the statistics. So that's all I'm going to say about stats today, because we're focusing on our registration process. So I'm going to select the patron registration link, which will bring me to a whole page about registering patrons. Now, before we actually register a patron as a library, I do want to show you our other registration link, which is at the top, and that appears for everybody, whether you're logged in or not. So I'll select that. I'm just going to quickly show this to you. So if a patron with a print disability wants to register themselves, they already have a public library card number, they can go to this form, the patron registration form. The link to the library registration form, which I'm going to show you, is here as well. The registration form for educators is here, as is the one for other professionals who support people with print disabilities, and we call that our Client Access Support Program. So I'm just going to scroll to the top here and click on the library patron registration form, or page, sorry. So I'll just walk through this with you, and then we'll get started on an actual form. When you sign in, you can begin a registration form new if you use this link called Register a Patron for CELA Service. Or you have the option when you're going through a form to save it as you go along, and then you can go to this link called View in Progress Registration Forms to see the ones that you've started and that you can go back to and complete. We provided this option just because we know how busy library staff can be, and sometimes there are interruptions. So we wanted you to be able to go partly through a form and then go back to it if that was necessary. We know also that registering patrons for CELA might not be something that you do very often. So we tried to give you as much help and support with the process. So there are lots of documents and a video and a script for calling patrons as well. But what I wanted to highlight is this link called Guide for Registering Library Patrons for CELA. So I'm just going to select it because I want to show it to you. So this one I'm going to go through quickly. So you can read this for yourself, but what I do want to show you is I want to show you some questions in terms of asking what type of format the person needs. So sorry, at this part I am going a little too quickly probably. I just want to get to the sections I want to show to you. Actually, before we talk about the formats, in this guide, it gives you a pretty thorough explanation of what a print disability is and our eligibility criteria. And we give you some examples of different conditions that are examples of print disabilities, essentially. So we thought that might be helpful to you. We also give you a bit of an explanation of what to do or examples when somebody does not have a print disability, which means they cannot sign up for CELA. Again, I'll just go through. And then the part I want to show you are the delivery options. And when we're going through the form, I'll go into this in quite a bit more detail. But I wanted to show you this part called choosing a delivery option. And the reason I wanted to do that is because it asks questions that might help a patron understand what formats and how they want to receive those formats from CELA. So it talks about asking them what technology they have at home. Maybe they have a Daisy player already, maybe they have an iPad, and that will help you select what format to choose. So again, I'll scroll quickly here. Sorry about that. And then it gives you the information about what happens after you submit the form. So I'm just going to leave it in terms of the guide there. Again, we really want to spend more time on the form itself, but if you have questions, let me know. Okay, I'm just going to check. Actually, I'll take a little bit of a pause before we actually go into the registration in case there are any questions about eligibility or types of print disabilities. Nope, doesn't seem to be, but feel free to ask anytime if you do have some. Okay, let's begin a registration. So I go up to register a patron for CELA service, that link. And the first thing it's going to ask me is for the person's library card number. So I'm going to fill in the information as we go along, just using some imaginary data, more or less. But I did want you to see what it's like to go through the form and go by field in case you had any questions. So I'm just going to type in a fake library card number here. And then we're going to register the person. And sorry, I should have prefaced this by saying, let's imagine that a woman, probably the mom, comes in with a boy who's about, I don't know, 9 or 10 years old. And she comes up to the desk and she says, my teacher, my son's teacher, just asked me to sign him up for CELA and said I should go to the library. We just found out that he has dyslexia. So let's pretend it's that scenario. So now you're going to register the patron. So let's pretend, let's just give him a name. We'll call him Nick, and we'll say his last name is Spencer. And you can ask the child or even the mother if they want their gender identified in their CELA registration, and it will be in their account information that only CELA staff see. So it's up to you, but there are different choices. Now, since he is a child, we don't require, well, we do require if it's under 18. So usually it's optional if it's an adult. So let's just give him a birth date. We'll say he's about 10 years old. And then you do have the option to add a designate. And a designate means that somebody who can access that person's account. So it means they can order books for that person. They can call us and request to change that person's password. They can view that person's reading history. So they do actually have full access. Having a designate can be very useful in some cases. So in this case, because he's a child, it's really great to have an adult on their account. Same with if it's maybe an older person, it can be easier to have someone else on their account. I also want to stress that it's important to register, so filling in the patron details, make sure it's the person with the print disability that you're registering. So in this case, we're not registering the mother, we have to register the son who's told us he has dyslexia, so we know he qualifies for CELA. So we fill out the son's name, but it's a good idea to have the mother's name or another adult there. So this is when we fill out the designate information. So when we do this, we need to make sure that the patron understands that the person has full access. So it's required that we check that box. And then we put in a name. So we give name to the mom. We ask for the relationship. So in this case, it's a parent. And we ask for a phone number as well. And then it's optional if you want to add an email address or not. I'll leave it in this case just to get through the form. But then we do ask the designate, and you can read this aloud, that the designate understands that our collection is only for use for people with print disabilities. The mom can help the child get our books or download our books, but they can't download a book and read it themselves because they're not eligible for CELA. So I'll just select that. And then we're ready to proceed. So one other thing I wanted to mention about being a designate is I know sometimes library staff want to be the designate for their patrons. It's library staff that will be ordering all the books for them. So you are welcome to fill out this information with your own details if that's what suits you and suits your library. There can be some challenges, though, if you are the designate and you have multiple, and you're supporting multiple patrons. So the challenge comes in because our system will only allow one email address per person. So if you put your email address for the person, we'll see that in the next page. Then when you're going through a form for another patron and you put in your email, it will tell you there's an error. So really in those cases, it's best to just contact member services and we can help you out there. Okay, so I am going to move on in the form. And I'm also going to mention, sorry, I should have mentioned this before. There's this save draft button. So if you want to save your progress as you go along, just press save draft at the stage where you need to leave the format. And then it will be in that link called view in progress forms that I showed you originally. Okay, I'm just checking. There don't seem to be any questions, so I'll keep going. All right, so the next page is our contact details page. And so we have to fill in all the fields. So I will just go ahead and put in some pretend data here. You don't have to put address to, that's optional. Put in the city they live in, put in their province, and put in their postal code as well. Oops. And their phone number. And then an email address. So I'm just going to pause at the email address. So we do prefer definitely if you add an email address for the patron, but it is optional for some of our delivery formats. So if the person wants to just download books from our site, we absolutely require an email address. If they want to borrow CDs or use direct-to-player service, for example, they might not have an email address. They might not use a computer at all, for example. So it's not required, but if they do want to download, they have to be able to log in and have an email address as well. Okay. So again, just for the sake of going through the form, I'm going to just skip entering the email. Actually, no, that's the service I want this person to get. So I will add a pretend email in. And just type it again. And then we ask for their preferred language. I'll say English in this case. And next is the eligibility criteria. For CELA service, we do not require proof of disability. We do require that the person acknowledge that they have a print disability. So you can actually read out the text that's on the screen, which basically says that our collection is only for someone with a print disability. So you always, if to get through the form, you have to say, yes, this person does have a print disability. If you say no, we can't really go through it. So we will say yes in this case. And if the person wants to, you can indicate what kind of print disability they have. This can be useful for us just for statistical purposes, but it's not required. We just need the person to acknowledge they have a print disability or you acknowledge it for them. And I'll just point out that at this point, this is where you might catch if you're accidentally registering the support person rather than the person with the print disability. So if you made that mistake, let's say you started to register the mother, you can go back and fill out the form showing the son's data, the son with dyslexia. Okay. So the next page is about proof of disability. So as I said, CELA, access to CELA is based on a self-declaration. We, to access CELA, do not require proof of disability. But CELA has another collection in our catalog called Bookshare, which is a US collection of books in alternative formats. and they require proof of disability. So what I wanted to say is that as libraries, you don't need to worry about the proof of disability form. It's the patron who needs to download the form, get it filled out by a certifying professional who can validate that they say they have a print disability, and then upload the form themselves. If the person has trouble doing that, of course you can help them, and this is why we've put this option into the library registration form. So let's pretend somebody would like access to Bookshare, so they need to provide us with the proof of disability. Then in this question here called, do you wish to provide proof of disability in order to access the Bookshare collection? I'll just say yes at this point. And then you have two options. You can download the proof of disability form, or you can upload and then submit it later. That's something you could do, and that will just give you the form. Or you could actually upload the form if you had it already filled out, for example, and or if the person has a CNIB card, then you can take a picture of the card and upload it here as well. So I just wanted to show you these options and just make sure I paused for a bit on this question, just because I think sometimes it's not clear. Sometimes people think you have to provide proof of disability to access CELA's collection, which isn't the case. So I'm actually going to say no. So we're going to move through the form. So we're going to, well, let's go back to our scenario. Kyle's mom says, oh no, we will do that later. I have to get the form and give it to Kyle's special education teacher. So that's fine. You'll move through the form. It's just good to let your patrons know about CELA's Bookshare collection. In particular, I would say for students, Bookshare's collection is huge. They have lots and lots of popular books, and Bookshare books are all in digital formats. So what that means is that if they want an audiobook from Bookshare, most of their collection is in synthetic voice. It means it's like a robotic voice, because basically it's text to speech. So that works for some people and others don't like it. So just you should be aware of that if someone does want Bookshare's collection. Okay, so let's keep going through the form. So I'll say, no, I don't want to provide proof of disability to access Bookshare's collection, and I move on to the delivery options. Okay, so we're going to spend a little bit of time on this particular section, because this is all about the format the person wants and how they're going to receive books from CELA. And there's a few different options. So what we're going to do is actually review each one. So the first option is download using our direct-to-player service. So what that means is that if somebody is using a mobile device, like a tablet or their phone, cell phone, a smartphone, I mean, then they can download the Easy Reader app and then add books from actually from the app onto their phone and read it right there. So this is actually, if someone's using digital service, that's the easiest way to get them. There's the least steps to getting books through direct to player. Some people, if you don't, may have their Daisy player configured for a direct to player service, which means it's being set up to connect to their local Wi-Fi collection. Then you would also use this download direct to player service. It means that when you select the direct to player format in our catalog, the book gets added to the person's bookshelf and it gets loaded onto their Daisy player. So again, it just means the book goes right onto either the app or to someone's player. So let's pretend Kyle says, oh yeah, I'm going to download Easy Reader onto my iPhone. So we want to select direct to player. So we select that option and then we go to format. And we have two choices. So you can select either Daisy Audio or Daisy Text and move through the form. Now, if you select Daisy Audio and then let's say tomorrow he wants to download an e-text book, he can. There's no limits in terms of formats, in terms of direct to player. You just have to choose one to get through the form. Okay, so that's it in terms of accessing books through direct to player in terms of registering the person. So I'll go back now to delivery options. And I'm going to select a different option, which is receive items by mail. So for somebody who prefers to receive books on CD, or they want Braille books, or they want print Braille books, they would select this option, or you would select it for them. So I just wanted to mention that Braille books do not have to be returned to us. So we actually emboss the Braille book on these thicker pages, basically with the dots on them. We put them in a box and we mail it to the person, and we don't need it back. They actually can keep Braille books from us. If somebody wants to access a Daisy audiobook on a Envoy Connect, which is our latest device for accessing our books, and they want to mail their Envoy Connect back to us, they can do that too, and then we send it back to them. And if somebody wants Daisy CDs, again, we will send the CDs out to them, but they have to return them to us. And then for print Braille books, that's the one format where we absolutely need to have that same copy back, because when we send out a print Braille book, which is that picture book, when we get it back, it actually goes out to the next person waiting for it. So I just thought I'd explain a little bit about our delivery and return policies as well. Okay. So let's pretend we're signing somebody else up and they want CDs sent to the mail to their home. I select receive items by mail and select formats. And so this is where we give you the different options. So what's the format you want to receive? Well, you can have CDs, you can have embossed Braille, or you can have print Braille, which are children's picture books with Braille. I see there's Janet has a question here. And Janet, I'll just unmute you here. Sometimes it just takes a minute. So I think you can talk, Janet.
Oh, sorry, hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so my question was, can I select both a Daisy and a download? Or one option?
Yeah, no, actually. Let's go back and have a look at that. So you mean a download, like direct to player? Is that what you mean?
No, download from the website. So if I'm the only reason I'm asking is because, you know, like sometimes I'm thinking for my father who gets his by mail. Sometimes it's easier for me to just download them on a device and bring the device to him. I wasn't sure if I could do both.
Right. So at the registration point, no, we want to filter you into one delivery option at this point. So let's pretend, so for your father, for example, he receives books directly in the mail. But if you wanted to get his account number and download some books for him, you could do that after he's registered. You won't be limited at that point. It's just on the registration form. Okay. Because we want to just sort of at this point silo the different delivery options.
Okay, thank you so much. That answers my question.
Okay, you're very welcome. Okay, so sorry, there's another question here. I'll just stop for a second. Oh, I see, feeling you answered it. Okay, great. I'll read it aloud though, just for the others. So physical braille does not need to be returned, and print braille does. Yeah, that's right. So keep print braille. We really don't want it back, and send back print braille though. That's really important. Okay. All right, so I'll go to the last option, which is to, oops, I have to unselect this one, download books directly from our website. So what this refers to is that you go to our site and pick the format that you want. So it could be an audiobook, it could be e-braille, which is, e-braille is electronic braille, and there's a special device called a braille display that you hook up to your phone or your computer, and the electronic braille display will read that file that you would have just downloaded for us through the display. And what it has are these little, they're like pins that stick up that form the braille cells so that someone can read it, read the book, or the book, I guess in this case, with their fingers, essentially using the braille display. You can also access our audio files and all of our e-text files as well. So the type of e-text we have are DAISY e-text files. We also have EPUB books this way as well. And also, through Bookshare, you can get books in Word format. So some people like reading it that way. Anyway, what I want to say is download means when you're picking a book in our collection, you would pick the zip file because it's a bigger file, so it's got to be zipped. You unzip it, and then you can transfer that file to the device that you're going to use to read our books. So let's pretend, going back to our scenario with Nick and his mom, let's say he wants, so he picked direct to player originally. So let's say, oh, it changes his mind. Now he wants to just download books. So we select that, and again, go to formats. It's the same step for each type of delivery option. And because it's essentially all formats pretty much from our collection, that's it. We can move through the form, but the delivery, the format, this format, you absolutely have to have an email address with us to be able to use it. So just again, letting you know about that. Okay, so let's move on. So now I'm going to press the button that says Privacy and Terms of Use. As I've said before, our collection is only for people with print disabilities. So teachers and others can access our books on behalf of students or clients with disabilities. So basically those roles are just kind of to bridge between the person needing the books and our website, essentially. But to be able to use our service, you have to acknowledge our terms of use. And what that means is that it's you cannot use it if you don't have a print disability. And we also have our privacy statement. So you can, if as library staff, you can literally just read the sentence out and the person has to agree. If they don't agree to this, then they actually can't register for CELA. So they have to press yes, or you would press yes for them. The terms of use just opens up a web page showing our terms of use information. It's quite long, and privacy statement as well. So if you did need to refer to those, you could just open those windows. So again, let's pretend the mom says yes, Kyle will not share his books with his friends. He's only going to use them for his purposes, his own purposes. So we say yes. It's already selected actually as the default. We go to the next button, which is additional comments. So you're almost actually at the end of the form. If you had any comments to us at CELA about this person's account, this is where you type them in. We don't see these all that often, but occasionally someone will write a comment saying, for example, their patron really likes romance books. And so we'll know that when we call them, to just talk to them about their CELA service, then we can add romance books, for example, to their profile if they want automated profile service. So really not much to say. You can fill it in or not fill it in, but just remember these are comments to us as CELA staff about this person's service. Oh, you know, another example sometimes that we get of a comment that we get are notes that say something like, Mrs. Smith is hard of hearing. So it just helps us to know to speak maybe a little slower and a bit more clearly to her. So anything helpful about her service. Okay, so once you come to this page, additional comments, you actually can go and review your form. So you can go back and read through it, make sure it's accurate. You can edit different pieces, parts if you need to, and go through. And then at this point, you can register. So I'm actually not going to press this button because it will create a registration. So we'll leave it at that, but I am going to tell you, don't worry about what happens after you do press this button. So I'm just going to leave the forum like this, just for at this point. What I do want to tell you is that when you use the library registration form, the account is created almost instantly, and the person will receive an email telling them their account number. And when you register them as the library, their password, sort of their temporary password, just to get them going, is the last 4 digits of the patron's phone number. So whatever phone number you entered as the patron's phone number, the last 4 digits become the temporary password. And of course, we encourage them to change it to something a lot more secure. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back to the guide because this gives you essentially the text of what will happen afterwards. So as I said, we send them a welcome message and it will have their 6-digit number in it. And of course, we can only email them that if they provided an email address. If they didn't provide an email address, then we will send them a message either on CD or through direct to player. So if they chose, and that depends on what they chose when they were going through the delivery options page or you were going through it with them. So in terms of getting the CD message or direct to player message, they get the welcome message, but they also will get 2 starter books just to try out the service. And then we encourage them to call us at CELA to set up automatic selection or just to talk about their services. They don't have to set up automatic selection. And what that means is that they pick genres, reading genres, and we will send books to them on a set schedule. And they can tell us the schedule they like. So it can be a maximum of 4 books a week, or it could be 1 book a month at minimum. So it's up to them. And they can also ask for specific titles outside of that schedule as well. So really it's a very broad choice in terms of how they get their books. If the person selected Braille or print Braille, or if that person is a child, we actually will call the person and talk to them about our services. The conversations for kids' books and for Braille are a little more complicated, so it's just easier if they talk to one of our contact center staff. We will actually, though, call any newly registered patron because CELA service, it might be a little complex to them at the beginning. And so we just want to reach out and make sure they understand how to use it, that we're giving them the books they want, and we've set up the right formats for them as well. So just keep in mind that we will call everybody, but we do encourage them to call us first if they like. Okay. So That actually is the end of our presentation. So we've gone through the registration and we have done it from start to finish, meaning I've shown you the guided information for them, for you, I mean, as library staff, so that you have all those help documents. And we've gone through the form, and now I've shown you what happens at the end. In terms of you as a library, you don't have to do anything really once you've submitted the registration form. I know some libraries like to keep their own record of the people they've registered. Some people enter that the person is eligible for CELA in their library, their own library record if they like, but that's really up to you. Each library does it differently. But once you submit the form, you're done. That person is registered for CELA, and then they will start to receive books from CELA, or that relationship is between that person and CELA.